must end. It is now time to open Texas 100%. Effective next Wednesday, all businesses of any type are allowed to open 100%. Also, I am ending the statewide mask mandate.
It's been 27 days since the great state of Texas returned to freedom and some sense of normalcy. They've reopened 100% of their businesses and ended a controversial statewide mask mandate. Must be nice. But remember when mainstream media and leftist Fauci lovers out there had a meltdown over Governor Abbott's decision to reopen, saying he was putting Texans in danger? And President Biden called the move Neanderthal thinking. Well, turns out, when you look at these numbers, there's a plot twist. New cases of COVID-19 in Texas are down 30.5% since the state reopened on March 10th. And now look at that. The number of COVID hospital patients is down 37.1% since that reopening. Texas didn't, quote, follow the science, end quote. They reopened, ditched the masks, and they're thriving, at least the mask mandate. So why aren't more states following suit? Here to discuss, Dr. David Samadi, author of The Ultimate Manual. Dr. Samadi, good to see you.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Any surprise to you that Texas has gotten rid of some of these lockdown situations, some of the mandates, and cases are still just plummeting?
Well, those graphs that you just showed are really, really important. And it just tells you, if you were going to start running an experiment, you have New York, New Jersey, and many different states that have been on lockdown and then continues closing the restaurants, the economy, versus places like Florida or Texas as a control group for that experiment. You realize that there's no need for any of the things that we did. All these mask mandates and lockdowns, it actually increased the number of hospitalization. It increased more death and more issues. These states like Texas that you showed, they're building herd immunity. They're building more defense against this virus. And they were able to save their economy and prevent a lot of casualties, secondary complications, all this anxiety and death and loss of their economy, etc. So I think that model is a much better model. We're finding out that they're doing really well, and I wish our state of New York and New Jersey and other places will follow the same lead. It's working very well for them, and they're very lucky.
Now, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Samadi, was asked about what's happened in Texas. We have the numbers, we have the data, it's quite clear. So people want to know what's the explanation for this, especially considering Governor Newsom, for example, of California, said of Governor Abbott in Texas's decision that it was reckless. Fauci said that this would lead to a surge, that this is not the time to do this, it's wrong. That was then. We have the data now. Here's Fauci's explanation of how we got to this place. Play it.
It can be confusing because you may see a lag and a delay because often you have to wait a few weeks before you see the effect of what you're doing right now. I'm not really quite sure. It could be they're doing things outdoors. You know, it's very difficult to just one-on-one compare that. You just have to see in the long range. We've been fooled before by situations where people begin to open up, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden, several weeks later, things start exploding on you. So we got to be careful we don't prematurely judge that.
To me, it just sounds like babble. I mean, there's many different versions of a really non-explanation for what's happened here coming from Dr. Fauci. What's true and what's not here, Doc?
Well, Dr. Fauci is an infectious disease physician. You're not going to hear from him not to wear a mask. You're not going to hear from him like, the game is over, COVID is ended, and you can go out and have a normal life. So, you don't wait for that to come. But, what basically he's saying is that he doesn't really know why Texas is doing so well. We don't need to wait as to why. The reason is because people already have built antibodies. This is not the same COVID from like a year ago where we didn't have any treatment. We didn't know who he was affecting. Remember, 99% of people recover from this. Go back to the same statistics that we had a year ago. Majority of the people do very, very well. Again, if you're over 65, you have cardiac issues, you have high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, you got to be careful. But then guess what? They got vaccinated. They have antibodies. They have protections. They have T-cell immunity, and they have their protection. So I think the worst part is behind us. I think that, he needs to look at the data. He needs to really give good information to public and boost the self-confidence of this country so we can go back to our normalcy. You cannot be in mask for the rest of your life.
I worry, Doc, that that's what we're heading toward here, that they'll say, well, maybe we'll relieve some of the mask mandate for some period of time, but it'll always be lingering in the background, maybe even to prevent flu season or to prevent flu and COVID season this coming wintertime. There'll be the reintroduction of mass masking as a policy. And to that end, I want to ask you, because I'm amazed here in New York City, how many people I see walking alone outdoors with masks on. I even see people driving in cars alone with the windows down, not that that matters, with masks on. Why won't Fauci come out and say it's actually not necessary to wear masks if you are alone or if you're outdoors and you're not in very close proximity having, a long conversation with somebody? Why can't he say it? I mean, is there science that I'm missing here? Is there some data set that shows that outdoor mask wearing is necessary because there's a really substantial transmission risk?
Not at all. In fact, you and I have spoken about this even like 6 months ago. We talked about the fact that if you're in the beach all by yourself or there's nobody near you, you don't really need to wear this mask because it doesn't have any effect. It doesn't really help you. I have seen the same type of people in the car, closed windows, all by themselves wearing the mask, and it doesn't make much of a sense. So I completely agree with you. And I think either this is becoming a habit for people, which should not be, or it doesn't make any sense. And I think he should come out and really tell exactly the facts so people know exactly what they're doing. These masks are not helpful when you're by yourself or out in the breeze when there's a nice wind and great weather out there. With summer coming up, I think this is the hard part of it, and the worst part of it is behind us. And a lot of good news will come in the next few weeks to months.
Do you think, Doc, that there'll be more MDs like yourself who, as a much larger percentage of the country is now vaccinated, the cases are going down, they'll be willing to come out and say, enough is enough, we actually have to let people go back and live their lives now? Or is there still too much fear, you think, within the medical profession for people to speak out?
No, I think there's always a concern where they work and how the administration is going to react to what they say. But more and more doctors are really understanding that that this is a manageable disease. Majority of the people do very well. We have medical treatment, we have vaccines, and they are very much optimistic like myself. But, unfortunately, they have their own personal opinion, and everybody has their own political views. But you have to put that aside. When you talk to them privately, they realize that, we are heading the right way, and we're leading the world in the vaccinations. We have great technology. We have great vaccines. And also, again, a lot of people have gotten this, like yourself, who have antibodies, and they're immune from this. So I think we're turning the corner. I think there's no room for panic and all these fear that was.
I just got to ask, Doc, before we let you go also, so you pointed out, I've recently had COVID. I've now recovered. I'm now negative on the test. I'm all good to go. Does science tell us that people who have natural antibodies and T-cell immunity really need to get vaccinated? It seems like all the old rules are being changed here. What should we know?
I think based on all the conversations I've had in some infectious disease, they basically say that if you have antibodies, you don't need to get a vaccine. But I understand that Dr. Fauci is recommending this vaccine to even people like yourself. I think that remains to be seen. If you already have gotten it, in theory, you should have antibodies. You can help other people. You're protected. So the vaccine is not going to really help so much. This idea about the antibodies being washed away or 3 months from now, you're not going to have any more protection, et cetera, I'm not sure how scientific it is and how accurate that science is. You should check your antibody 3 months. Let's do another segment and find out exactly where you are. I promise you probably will have your antibodies even then. You can also check the level of your antibodies and see how strong it is and monitor that for yourself. And as long as you have that protection, in theory, you are good and you don't need a vaccine.
All right,
Just
Dr.
like-
Samadi, good to see you. We'll try to follow up on that. We'll actually see where we are. Thanks so much for joining.